Hello everyone, and thank you for coming today to our webinar, United in Service, Building a Volunteer Department That's a Recruiting Magnet. Today's webinar is sponsored by Scott Safety with support from PBI, Tyco, Citrix, DPS HR Consulting, Esri, and Cigna. Please adjust your computer speaker volume at this time to make sure that you can hear everyone. Again, thank you for attending today's webinar. If you experience any technical difficulties, please bring this to the attention of the organizer through your chat box. We will do our best to make sure that you can get all of our webinar to the fullest quality. Technical quality is directly related to the speed of your internet connection. Again, please feel free to submit any questions or comments through our chat box. We're going to get started today. We only have 90 minutes, and we have a lot that we would like to share with you. Today, your moderators are going to be Chief Jona Olsson and Deputy Chief Jonathan Howard. The organizers are Odessa and myself. We're going to go into our introductions. I'm going to turn it over to Chief Jona Olsson.
Thank you to everyone, and thank you particularly to Odessa and Cami and the Fire 2020 staff for sponsoring this webinar. And I really want to appreciate all of our partners who are on our call. Thank you for taking the time to be here. Let me just say I was really gratified to see so many friends and names that I recognize on the registration list from New Mexico all the way to Ottawa, so welcome to all of you. Just by way of introducing my input onto this webinar, part of it comes certainly from my work as Director of Cultural Bridges to Justice and a justice trainer, but also as a chief of a very small rural volunteer department. So my focus is coming from that perspective. So welcome to everybody.
Okay. So we will do our best to resolve the echo issue as on here. Jonathan, would you like to start?
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. It's afternoon here on the East Coast. My name is Jonathan Howard. I'm a Deputy Chief of the Bowie Volunteer Fire Department in Prince George's County, Maryland. My department is relatively small compared to the larger Prince George's County Department, but in relative terms, my department is rather large compared to Jona's. I am also an equal opportunity supervisor at the Department of Agriculture, and I'm very passionate about the topics we're going to talk about today, and I hope everyone gets an opportunity to understand why diversity is needed in the fire service and the importance of having it within your own department. Our vision is to provide an exclusive and diverse workforce that brings a broad range of life experiences, the skills, the cultural understanding, the various languages, communication styles, creative problem solving and community connections, and to innovate and reinvent our emergency services.
Great, thank you. This is Jona. We wanted to give everyone a sense of the objectives we had for this, and we certainly hope that throughout the webinar people will send in their questions on the chat, and there will be a couple of different opportunities later in the webinar where we're going to really be asking for participants' input in helping us move this mission of ours forward. So first of all, you've heard our very basic vision for this change. We're going to look a little bit at why the change is needed. Often we talk about inclusion and diversity, we get into legal discussions or debates or more heated arguments. But we rarely talk about why the change is needed, and we even less often talk about what are the benefits. We'll talk about both of those. We will take a look at some of today's words, inclusion and diversity, so we want to look at what the difference there is. We will do some, as I said, looking at the benefits and why are we doing this. We will talk about building different cases for having an inclusive and diverse organization. And then we're really going to want input from you all in sharing what's working in your department, what promising practices do you have, what suggestions, recommendations do you have for building our diverse departments as recruiting magnets. So that will be the input from you folks. And we'll close with some other suggestions from Jonathan and myself, and also look at one of the resources that's available right now, and that's one of the recruiting videos from 2020. So we want to look first at why some change is needed. We'll certainly talk about more of that. We'll look at some of the reality experiences of some of our volunteers in just a minute. But this slide is recognizing that many of the national organizations, from the IFC, the International Association of Fire Chiefs, from the Volunteer and Combination Officer section of the IFC, the IAFF, the International Association of Firefighters, and the National Volunteer Fire Council, many are really taking this seriously, that their fire service leaders are recognizing the need for change in our fire service culture. And I think we're going to hear Dan Eggleston, who is the section chief for the Volunteer and Combination Officers section for the IAFC, could not be with us. The IFC board meeting is meeting right as we're speaking on this webinar, but I believe we have a statement that Dan recorded a few days ago.
Hi, I'm Dan Eggleston. I'm the IFC Board of Director for the Volunteer and Combination Officers section, and I'm proud to participate in today's webinar to pay attention to diversity and inclusion for volunteer fire departments. First of all, I think this is a wonderful opportunity for us to explore opportunities for the community to step up and help out their local volunteer department, realizing that our community in general have a wide range of folks from different backgrounds, and that diversity and that differences of opinions and backgrounds really help to strengthen any volunteer department. It's like we're making our own stone soup. We're able to take all the different opinions and backgrounds and strengths of people willing to help out and really make a very vibrant and strong volunteer department. So I really think staying focused on inclusion and diversity in our department leads to a much stronger and resilient department long term. Again, I think that's one of the strengths and background of a volunteer department. So I'm really happy that this conversation is happening. Hopefully this will lead to a stronger volunteer fire service in general.
Okay, so what Dan was talking about basically is the importance of having inclusion and diversity within our volunteer departments. And one thing that we have to really think about and realize that, we serve the community in which some of us live, some of us work, and it's extremely important that our membership reflects the diversity, the inclusion of those communities. As an expert, as an organization, we must take positive steps to ensure human dignity by avoiding any remaining vestiges of discrimination or unequal treatment, including but not limited to race, color, spirituality, gender, age, national origin, ancestry, socioeconomic backgrounds, sexual orientation, gender expression, gender identity, ethnicity, marital status, or any other legally protected characteristic, and to allow such discrimination or unequal treatment, whether active or passive, weakens our ability to respond to our varied customer bases. And that's our dignity statement. And we wholeheartedly support it, we wholeheartedly represent it, and we lead by examples in our community, in our departments.
And the excerpt there that Jonathan just read for us, the full statement from the IFC Human Dignity Statement is available in the materials that 2020 has put together for this webinar. The IFC Human Dignity Statement was just approved by the board a few months ago, so this is the new version of it that will be available in your materials. So we wanted to, with this guidance and leadership, we wanted to look at why change is needed, what's going on in the culture of the volunteer fire service, and as we said, for most of these issues, clearly they're also going on in career departments as well. But why is a change needed? So we ask all of us that are on our panel here today to read some of the current realities, some stories from folks that we know in the volunteer and combination service. Want to let you know that, this is Jonah speaking, sorry, that in the years, about the last 11 years, I have started collecting stories anytime I've done a training in a fire department anywhere in the U.S. and Canada or the U.K. I have hundreds of them by now. Many of them are incredibly sad or make us incredibly angry to hear them. But we're going to hear a few stories now, and to let everybody on the call know, on the webinar know, that we have changed the names of the people and taken out any other possible identifiers so that we can keep the confidence of the folks on these stories, since most of them were unreported. Anyway, we want to maintain the confidentiality of these folks.
Okay, so we're going to begin with Sarah's story. And I want everybody to realize that, as Jonah said, these stories are true. We have removed any PII or any type of information that could clearly point toward any particular individual or department. So the first one is Sarah's story. And I want everybody to remember that she's someone's daughter. So this could be your daughter. Okay, here we are. I'm a 29-year-old white volunteer firefighter, the male lieutenant of my company, in a room full of people, said no woman will rise up the ranks of my company if I have anything to say about it.
Liz's story. She's someone's sister. I'm a 20-year-old white volunteer. In training, I was told to put up the 35-foot ladder by myself in front of the rest of the crew. All training SOGs for our department dictate that 2 to 3 firefighters should raise this ladder.
Frank's story. I am a 27-year-old African-American firefighter EMT. During an EMT class, the instructor requests all students to pick a partner. The class diversity was 80% white male, 20% included the females, and 1 African-American male. No white male student picked either of the 3 females, whom 2 were white, 1 was Hispanic, or the only African-American male. The Hispanic female and African-American male ended up being partners and maintained the highest average scores in the class.
Carol's story. I am a 32-year-old white paid-on-call firefighter EMT in a combination department. I was 6 months on the department, and it was my first day in a new station for rotation purposes. When I walked into the station, I said good morning to the male firefighter standing inside. That firefighter, who is now an officer, said, "We don't like you, we don't want you here, so don't fucking talk to me."
This is from a March 2013 news report. A male firefighter began sexually harassing probationary firefighter Rachel S. when she joined in 2007. Her lieutenant did not act on her complaints. 2 weeks before her 1-year probationary period ended, she was fired. A jury returned a judgment of $1.67 million against the township and $75,000 against the lieutenant. Testimony at the trial showed that the township firefighters were shown the mandated sexual harassment training video, but on a split screen so they could watch the NASCAR race.
Kevin's story. Kevin was a white company officer. After he was promoted with excellent performance reviews and a Valor Award, he told his crew he was gay. For the next year, he was insulted, harassed, found urine in his helmet, full condoms in his gear pockets, fag painted on his locker, threatening notes in his car, and had his air pack sabotaged. Kevin left operational firefighting to become a dispatcher. He said, quote, "I never felt safe again. How could I ever be sure the guy with me in the fire wasn't the one who threatened me?"
James's story. I'm a 36-year-old African-American in a combination department. I finally got my promotion to lieutenant. I was just assigned a shift at a new station in the outskirts of the city. My first shift on the job, I opened my new locker to find 2 pamphlets from a white supremacy group.
Cindy's story. What's being said when you're not present? I am a 24-year-old volunteer firefighter. A male firefighter and I had been talking in the bay. We went into the equipment room and he said, "Hey, have you ever seen Fly Eyes?" I said, "Fly Eyes? Is that a band?" He said, "No," and then put both hands on his crotch of his pants. He pulled the seam upwards to show me how his testicles were on both sides of the seam in his pants, simulating what a fly's eyes look like up close.
Rico's story. I'm a 32-year-old Japanese-American volunteer firefighter. Our firefighters were learning to use new stabilizing equipment in an extraction training. A male firefighter was referencing the female piece of the stabilization bar and using his fingers to mark measurements. The demonstration devolved to this. He said, "If you get 2 fingers in there, that's good. But 3 is ideal, and then she'll be all lubed up and ready to work."
Carrie's story. I am a 25-year-old white volunteer. In 2 different incidences by 2 different male firefighters, I was yelled at, screamed at, had threatening words and gestures thrown at me, and was pinned against a wall. I later found out that one of these guys had throttled another female firefighter while she was driving a rig. By throttled, I mean choking her, both hands around her throat.
Sandra's story. Reported assault with recrimination. I'm a 30-year-old white firefighter in a combination department. I'm a driver-operator in an engine company. I was sitting at the table with 6 men when the male captain came in. He was obviously high, touched me inappropriately, and said he would rock my world. I said stop. I went to check my engine. He followed me into the cab and tried to grope me. I ran into the bathroom and locked the door. After almost an hour, a firefighter came to see if I was okay and said the captain had fallen asleep. When I reported this to another officer, he said I had a personality problem and that I was a troublemaker. I was transferred not long after this incident.
Tanya's story. I am a 33-year-old African-American part-time firefighter in a combination department. Between calls at the station, 6 of us, 3 African-American and 3 white firefighters, were watching a History Channel program about the U.S. Civil Rights Movement. Just as the film showed Southern white firefighters turning high-pressure hoses on Negro protesters, the white lieutenant walked into the day room, looked at the TV, and said, "Ah, I wish we could go back to those good old days."
Haley's story. I'm a 24-year-old volunteer firefighter. From the beginning of my time in the fire service, when I was from ages 16 to 19, I was sexually harassed and made to feel as if I was not competent for the job because of my gender. My fellow firefighters treated me as if I were no more important than a dog. I was asked to perform sexual favors in order to get better treatment. The men purposely put me in harm's way on the fire ground to scare me into leaving. Despite being fully competent and eager to learn, they set me up to fail during every training, hoping I would be embarrassed enough to leave. Fellow firefighters put porn in my locker and sent naked pictures of themselves to my phone and email. I was sexually assaulted by 3 drunk firefighters, one of whom was an officer. At least a dozen firefighters, including the highest-ranking members, signed a petition stating that if I continued to respond to calls, they would not go. This meant our department would essentially cease to exist, as we couldn't get staffing to respond to emergencies. After I finally distanced myself from this department, I was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, which I still continue to fight. I would ask each of us to simply take a breath right now. And I want to thank the men and women who were willing to share their stories with us. and thank the members of our panel who were willing to read these stories. And I just want to say again, this is Jona, that in my trainings with the fire service on this continent and in Europe, I unfortunately have collected hundreds of these stories. Most of them go unreported because the people for whom the experience is happening love this job, love being a volunteer firefighter. And they don't want to do anything to jeopardize their service to their community. So they often don't report. And you saw from a couple of the stories that even when they do report, there are often recriminations and the victim themselves get blamed for whatever happened. We're not saying this happens in every volunteer department, certainly not. And we're not saying that all the members of the department participate in this kind of behavior or attitude. But it's happening enough that we think it has a serious impact on not just our personnel and they're able to perform, but on our customer service. Jonathan, did you have?
Yeah, in addition to what you said, Jona, again, I would like to reiterate the point that these are just note cards of individuals that have turned them in.
Right.
And these aren't actual reported full-fledged cases. And I'd also like to say that throughout the examples that were given, we still have situations, what I like to label as bullying. And those situations are, don't have a really discriminatory tone, but individuals who feel as though their power, they impose power or threatening comments or just a overall different demeanor against those that are not as strong or does not believe to defend or speak up for themselves. The thing with this is that this goes on in all kinds of departments. Volunteer, combination, paid, on call, all over the country. My question today that I would like for the audience to really start thinking about is, one, can you say that none of this has ever occurred in your department that you know of or that you've heard or that's been rumored? And two, if it has, what have you or what has the leadership, what has been done to mitigate the situations? And so what we want to start talking about is what we call this paradigm shift in our thinking. And a lot of these things occur because of cliques or groups or good old boy networks or whatever you want to call it. But the question is what are we doing to provide any type of recruiting tools, magnets, to get individuals to be part of our clique, part of our fire department brotherhood / sisterhood. And fortunately in my department, we do an extremely good job, I think, in recruiting and retaining a whole diverse workforce. As you can see in the slide to the top left, that's myself, Lieutenant Yang, and firefighter Chrysler. We rescued a dog out of a house, and that was the paper. That was the actual picture that was posted in the front page of the paper. But what I looked at was it wasn't the most important part of rescuing the dog. That was a perfect image of an example of providing a diverse department for our community. And believe it or not, the community, when they read the paper and they see the Twitters and they see the Facebooks, when they see people that looks like them, that act like them, that talk like them, that believe in the same things they believe in, they're more apt to want to join and want to help protect the community as well. So let's go to the next slide and talk a little bit about inclusion and diversity. And inclusion and diversity is a value-added service. And in real simple terms, and I don't proclaim to be some super-duper scientist or anything like that, and I like to always try to talk about things in their simplest terms. Simply saying, if we include any and everyone, and we diversify our department, like they teach you to diversify your stocks, then that's more ammunition, that's more options, that's more opportunities for individuals, for the community, to feel like they are a part of a larger brotherhood / sisterhood. We could greet inclusivity and diversity with curiosity and enthusiasm. And a lot of this comes because we just don't know. We may not know what certain cultures or what certain languages or certain rituals, we just may not understand the purpose, the meaning, and why it's done. But that doesn't always mean that it's not good. I was always told a while ago that it can be different and still be right. So, Jonah, if you wanted to add a couple things to that.
Sure. Actually, I appreciate that line. We could greet new inclusivity and diversity with curiosity and enthusiasm instead of what we're doing now, which is great trepidation and worry and resistance. So, and on the next slide, there we go. One of the things that happens often is the minute the conversation of diversity shows up, it's something that we anticipate is going to cause conflict, and it's going to get us in some kind of legal trouble. Instead, we could, this is the paradigm shift in our thinking, we could simply recognize that inclusive diversity can be or should be the high-octane fuel that powers our department's highest performance. As Jonathan said, it is that very difference that will offer us higher performance in our departments. And we've been using the term inclusion and diversity here a couple of times, so I wanted to, if we can go to the next slide there, wanted to talk just for a moment about what's the difference here. Inclusion hasn't been the term that we've been using as much in recent years, and just more recently we've added the inclusion to this. We had talked about diversity a lot. So I wanted to make it clear what we're talking about here. Diversity in itself is simply the differences, all those kinds of differences that we've talked about, and we've got a list of them, certainly not inclusive on this slide. And while diversity is our ultimate goal in order to better fulfill our mission, which is what Jonathan and I and Fire 2020 believe, it's our ultimate goal, but what's happened today in so many departments, volunteer, combination, career, is that diversity has become some kind of numbers game. It's become the check boxes. How many boxes can I check off? And if we can find one black lesbian, we can check off 3 boxes right away, and there we go. We're done diversifying for a year. I'm saying that tongue-in-cheek, obviously, but the diversity is our goal, but we need to do it in the right way. So that's where the inclusion comes in. If we can pop to the next slide. The inclusion is about creating the culture of the organization that really welcomes people, affirms the differences, doesn't try to make people act like whoever else is already there. I love this quote. This is from the United Kingdom. They produced a Fire and Rescue Service Equality and Diversity Strategy Plan, 10-year plan, that's also available in your materials if you would like to look at it. The unfortunate thing is that the governments have changed, and a lot of the same things that are happening here to the fire service from our government is happening in Great Britain, and they have stopped this plan midway, but the plan itself is excellent, and I would recommend folks look at it. But I love this quote. It says, an inclusive organization recognizes people's different needs, their different situations and goals, and removes the barriers that limit what people can do and achieve. And we want that for all of our volunteers. We want that for all of our responders. We need, as leaders, need to recognize that people are different. We need to know what those differences are and how that fits our mission, and then recognize what their goals are and remove any barriers that might limit them from being successful.
And that's to piggyback on what Jona just referred to as inclusion. I want to take a few seconds, and if you go back to the slide previous, and talk a little bit about what diversity is. And we all see it on the screen, and it represents a multitude of human differences in experience, our thoughts, the way we do things, the way we see the world, our problem-solving skill sets, our language, the way we communicate, our norms. Again, it's not wrong. Just because historically we've been accustomed to doing things a certain way, a certain amount of time, and you all know you're in the fire service, the way we fought fires 40 years ago, it isn't the same way we fight fires now. And I will guarantee you it won't be the same way we fight fires 10 to 15 years from now. But the key here is that to make your department stand out, or to provide, like I said previously, greater ability to be able to do different things, communicate with a different culture, I want to strongly encourage each individual department to create a more diverse department that allows for the ability to do things different. Again, just because it's different does not mean it's not right. And included also, we talked about the racial and ethnic identities, the gender identities. I mean, there are so many other ways we can diverse. It's just not on color. A lot of departments think, like Jona said, if they, for example, get a black lesbian female, they check off 3 boxes, black, lesbian, and then female. But there are so many other ways that we can diverse. One of the things here that weren't really discussed or weren't brought up, and something that I'm experiencing in my department, is the age diversity. And I'm quite sure some of you out there also are going through the same thing. We have a little bit of a, the old versus the young, or, you hear the older generation, or I call them seasoned veterans, if you will, say, the things that these younger kids are doing, we wouldn't have allowed in our time. So again, when we talk about diversity and when we talk about inclusion, it's not always focused on color or ethnicity or gender. There's a big gamut of other options and other avenues that we can do to make our department more diverse.
Hi, Jona and Jonathan, this is Odessa. There was a question that came in.
Thanks, Jonathan. Yeah, I realized.
Hello?
Yeah, we're here.
Okay, so the question that came in from the listener is, what happens when your city council bullies your department? The area in which I am from was majority white years ago, and now is a majority black. Our department is mainly white male. We have tried to recruit females, black males. However, we can't get enough black males to pass background and drug screening. City Council has stopped promotional processes because of lack enough diverse applicants. Do we promote on diversity or skills and education? It is a problem that's been happening, that's been plaguing this department for a long time.
Well, this is Jona, and there are a whole lot of questions in that question. But to pull up, to get to one kind of bottom line for me, we have to be hiring, and in this case volunteers, they are approved for membership, they're not really hired, based on their ability to help us meet our mission, not necessarily who they are diversity-wise. So one of the issues, and we'll talk a little bit about this in a bit, is we constantly have the issue of standards. By bringing folks who are not white, straight males that somehow we have to lower the standards in order to bring in folks of men and women of color or LGBT folks or women, and that is simply not the case. And we'll talk again about standards in a bit. It sounds like whatever recruiting is being done is not hitting the right people. If people are being dropped from the roles because of a variety of things that have little or nothing to do with fire service, then, as you were saying, they can't pass a drug test. I'm guessing there's a whole lot of white folks that can't pass a drug test either, given the national stats on drug use. But my question would be, and I'd want to talk to someone in the department to find out where the recruiting is being done. Jonathan, did you have a...
Yeah, Jonah, the only thing I would like to add is that Jonah mentioned standards, and the key there is it doesn't matter, or it should not matter, a person's gender, race. If the standard is the standard and they can't meet it, then we get ourselves in trouble when we try to bend the rules, break the rules, do things that are against our standards. Now, I can't provide a one-word answer or a total solution for that particular situation. The thing I would like to caution is, when you lower the standards to aim or gear toward a particular ethnicity, religion, whatever the case may be, you open yourselves up for liability down the road. So the key, like Jonah said, and I'll wrap it up, is to keep the standard the same. We don't want those that can't meet the standard. If you meet the standard, then everything else should be all equal. But the basic standard of passing a background check or passing a drug test, things like that, that's there for a reason. And I can go on, I'll talk later on about some additional things about that, but I didn't want to hold that part up so we can keep going.
Thanks, Jonathan. Yeah, and I would just add, this is Jonah again, I would just add that while our standards have to remain rigorous, they absolutely have to do this job, but they need to be job relevant. And that's one of the issues. It's a much longer conversation, but we all know of departments who have kept or created standard for the purpose of keeping certain groups out. We need to always be revisiting what are our standards, are they job relevant to the new 2014 mission of the fire service, which has become an all-hazard service, has in increasingly diverse communities, and for most of us we're also doing primarily emergency medical service. Most of our volunteer departments now, if we do EMS, are basically EMS departments that fight a little fire. So we'll come back to that. I wonder if we could talk a little bit, go to the slide on building the case. There we go. And you can just put the whole list up there if you like, right? And I think, Jonathan, you were going to talk briefly about building the case on customer service and also building the case for retention and morale. And let me just say at the beginning here, we're just going to touch on these very briefly today. We may do a future webinar that really takes these issues in more detail. But there is an article that is available that takes on all of these in your materials. So with that intro, Jonathan, you wanted to talk briefly about customer service and retention?
Yes. Thank you, Jonah. I just wanted to talk real briefly about two topics here. And as Jonah said, there are future webinars that will really go into these topics. But the first I would like to talk about is the customer service piece of what it is we do. And each one of you out there know what it's like to go at 2 o'clock in the morning to help Miss whoever, Mr. whoever, in their bed because they fell out. And you know what it's like to run the calls in the blizzard, the thunderstorms, and that kind of thing, just to provide what we call a customer service or citizens assist. But the key here is that that customer, that citizen, that community leader that you don't know, that mayor's mom, that governor's niece, the way we treat all individuals has a positive and just also an adverse and a negative effect on our department. The key piece about customer service and inclusion and diversity is we treat people with respect, whether we like them, dislike them, agree with them, whatever we could think of. If we respect our customers and our customer base, in the long run, it serves as a positive attribute to your department. I don't know about your department, but a lot of my department really survives on donations. And so can you imagine if we had crews that didn't service a Muslim community or a Asian community, or didn't respond to a call, or didn't provide good patient care or things like that to those type of individuals, and we turn around and send these individuals a request for a donation. You know, when the whole big scheme of things, the volunteer departments now rely on donations from the community. So again, stress to your crews, stress to your administrative sides, that we have to treat our customer base with the utmost respect to make sure that they are included, it's diverse, so that no barriers are placed up. The second thing I wanted to talk about, and along with that retention and morale, is that in my department, we do a pretty good job of recruiting. We have high schools in our first response area. We have a college pretty much in our area, so we do a pretty good job of getting people in. The problem is retaining those individuals. One of the problems, and I'm quite sure this is a problem that's going across the country, and no matter if you're in Washington to Florida to New York to California, it's the same issue, just maybe a little different. But what we like to do is we get a member in 2 to 3 months. I like to sit down as the training deputy and say, what is it that's keeping you here? Or if a person is left, why did you leave? And a lot of what I found is that there are two main things that pretty much keep people around or get people to leave. One is structure or leadership. That's the very first thing. The fire department is a paramilitary organization. We have rank, we have responsibilities, and individuals who join, believe it or not, they look for that. The second thing, the biggest, the most frequent reason why people stayed was they said they liked it. And when I dug in and went in depth, I said, what is it that you like about my department? The first thing they said, the people, the members, they make me feel at home, they're willing to train me and teach me and help me, and they make it fun. They didn't say anything about age, they didn't say anything about gender, ethnicity, religion. They said the people made it fun. And that's what I stress to all of our members. You know, and I like to use the term, we're like the good cholesterol. You know, as you get older, you get these cholesterol build up in your arteries and things like that. But over time, if one cholesterol grabs another cholesterol grabs another, then 4 to 5 years from now, imagine where your department will be. And what happens is to let that work for itself. You recruit, you retain the people who provide you with positive images, provide you with the overall positive experience for your customers. And then over time, that's who you'll collect, and that's who you'll have to build your department to go forward in the future.
Thanks, Jonathan. Thank you. Just to let folks on the call, we're not going to talk about all of these again. You can read the article, and there may be another webinar. But I wanted to take on very quickly the business case for building an inclusive service. And there's several issues to this, but two of them that I want to talk about. One is if we do not diversify, if we do not create that inclusive environment so that folks coming in, we have recruited people from diverse backgrounds, but we haven't changed the culture, two things are likely to happen. One, people will leave because they don't feel, as Jonathan said, they don't feel affirmed or welcomed. But some of them are going to take legal action. That's not a very cost-effective move for any department, volunteer, combination, or career. But the second part of that is not just the cost of that, of potential legal actions, which is certainly not what I want to focus on. I want to focus on the fact that we spend a lot of time recruiting, and if we have not done the work to change the culture, to change the environment, folks from diverse backgrounds are going to leave. And if they leave, now it's that revolving door. We want to stop that revolving door syndrome because we've already spent time and energy and money to train, to equip, to test, to get folks in. If we don't change that environment, we're likely to lose them. I wanted to say something quickly, and then I'll take on the health and safety piece, is that none of us on this panel are anti-white straight males. That's not the point whatsoever. The fire service has been a majority led by white guys, and they've done a great job. But we're looking at what's happening in our communities as our communities are expanding and diversifying rapidly across the country, and also that our mission is expanding rapidly. And so it's time that we take a very leadership approach in looking at both of those. So just quickly on health and safety, there are so many issues of how a more inclusive, diverse department really helps with the health and safety of our personnel. I want to take on just one. I think from hearing the stories that were read, we understand, or we should at least be able to hear the emotion and the toll that those stories, those experiences took on individual personnel. I got to say, for me, as a woman in the fire service, as a lesbian in the fire service, if I am working in an environment that is not welcoming, that is indeed not even completely overtly hostile, but just simply that kind of, as Jonathan was saying, those little bullying comments or those shunning, whatever it might be, up to and including actual overt assault, whatever it may be, if I have to spend any energy protecting myself or putting shields up when I go to work to this job that I love, if I have to spend any energy protecting myself, then I'm not able to perform the 110% every day, every shift, every call, the way that each of us has to perform. That's a mission impact if we don't do this. But health-wise, we can look at the studies that are being done on what's called complex PTSD in looking at the accumulation of those little attacks, or in some cases not little attacks like physical or sexual assault, on our personnel. That has a significant direct health impact on our personnel. So there's, again, you can read the article and we'll talk about that in a next, another webinar. And I wanted to move just kind of as a wrap up to that, to the next slide, because we have to stay mission focused. We have to understand our mission and see how expanded our mission is. One of the things that we just totally believe is that if we become more inclusive and more diverse while staying totally firmly rooted in our mission, a couple of things are going to happen right away. One, we are going to be able to better serve everyone, regardless of their cultural roots, their language, their age, their orientation, their gender, etc. Second, we're going to be more trusted. That seems like a throwaway, but it is not. If we are more known, if folks in our department look like, sound like, have the same cultural norms as our community and the customers, we're going to be more trusted to do our job. If we're trusted, and then move to the third one, if we are more trusted, we're going to be safer on the job. and people are going to listen to our directions better on the job. In an emergency, in a disaster, our personnel are going to be healthier, as I just mentioned. Next. Again, the business case. We're going to if we're a more inclusive, diverse department, we're going to waste less time and energy and money. And lastly, the title of our webinar, if we become more inclusive, people hear about it, people recognize it, our organization becomes a recruiting magnet. And I think that kind of a reference again to the standards piece, if we could go to the next slide. A good friend of mine, Jagtar Singh, is a retired deputy chief from the UK. And we've had these conversations a lot about recruiting and about lowering standards, and his response I've always loved. He says, I don't want the fire and rescue service to simply reflect the community. And that's often what we hear, right? We should reflect our community. He says, I don't want us just to simply reflect the community. I want the fire and rescue service to reflect the very best of every community. So back to the participant who wrote in about their department being bullied by the city and not being able to recruit diverse members. We need to reflect as leaders on how are we recruiting, have we looked at the standards, where are we recruiting, etc. And then Jonathan, we're gonna open this up to get some feedback from folks, and we're close on time. We're a little behind time, but we're good.
Okay. Can we go to the next slide? Let's talk a little bit about.
You there?
Yeah,
we were gonna. Yeah, we're on that slide. Can you see the promising practice? To try to see if people want to call in or offer their ideas.
Odessa just sent out the message to ask if we had any feedback or problems in practice. If you have anybody out there that'd like to say a few things, please let us know.
Right. What's working in your department? What promising practices are working, or what ones are you working on and think will work?
Go ahead, Matthew. You're unmuted.
Hi, thanks guys. This is Matthew from the Rainbow Volunteer Fire Department out here in San Diego County, California. I know that in the past we've had just a walk-in style recruitment process, but lately word of mouth from our current volunteers and previous that have moved on to paid departments have began when they get people that come in or people that are interviewing through the colleges during their fire classes. They're now utilizing word of mouth for us to be able to recruit new and potential staff members for our single station department. As well as we've developed and have a department monitored Facebook page that reaches out to our community almost like a Twitter feed as far as incident information and dates and times when we'll be accepting applications.
Thank you, Matthew. I believe Evan, hold on just a moment, Evan, and I will unmute you. Oh, okay, Evan doesn't have a mic, but Evan Kellis mentioned that the fire service should be a place of zero tolerance. Hazing should be grounds for immediate termination. Jonah and Jonathan, that's the only two that I have as far as comments coming in.
Because part of what many of us love about the fire service is the camaraderie and the humor, and often the humor we have in the fire service we need because we see some pretty horrible things during the day. So we're not trying to get rid of humor, but most of us know the difference between humor that is inclusive and humor that's putting somebody down. So thank you, Evan, because that's work we all need to do.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Jonathan, make your comment, and then I have a question from Brittany. So Brittany, I will unmute you, and then I have a question. Then Allie will follow Brittany after that. Go ahead, Jonathan.
Okay, just real quick. I'm sorry. Thank you for the comments, especially. I like to come out to California, so anytime you got to let me know when I can come. But anyway, remember the thing I learned in marketing class was word of mouth is free advertising. It doesn't cost any money. It doesn't. You don't have to do anything. However, as long as it's positive, it works absolutely great. The other thing I like to say is that we have in our department we have membership individuals that are assigned to that particular portion of the department. And just here recently, last weekend, we had a very large fellow come in, and you know, he wanted to apply to be a member. And you know, you look at him and you think, well, you know, he could never pass a physical. That type people will look at him like that. But throughout, maybe in the first 30 minutes, when the gentleman left, he pulled me aside. He said, "Thank you for making me feel included." And that's going to go a long way because we have administrative functions, we have auxiliary functions. If the individual can or can't pass a physical, there are other avenues in our department that we can utilize the diversity of people's training and things that they want to do. So go ahead with the comment. I'm sorry.
No, not a problem. Thank you. Brittany, I have unmuted you. Would you like to ask your question?
Yes. In our county, I'm the new volunteer fire and EMS recruiter for an entire county in Maryland. And in our 1st and 2nd battalions, it is primarily an Hispanic community. The problem that we're having with recruitment there is that there's a huge language barrier. And in the past, past recruiters have come up with brochures that are driven towards Mexican or Spanish speaking individuals. The problem is that we get them inquiring further after they read those brochures, but then when they go to the stations, there's nobody there to keep up that language. So how can we combat that at the station level?
Great question, Brittany.
Go ahead, Jonah.
Great question, Brittany. We have similar issues here in New Mexico, certainly. White English-speaking folks are a minority in New Mexico. Hispanic folks are the majority. One of the suggestions I can make is what some departments here do for our non-Spanish speaking responders is offer Spanish language classes or whatever is the primary language in your community. Offer those classes to your current firefighters and officers, and where possible make sure there is an incentive, whether it's doesn't work in all volunteer departments, but incentive of extra pay or a promotional perk or whatever it may be, but that it simply becomes part of the job. It also becomes then one of the things that it's going to be asked for in interviews and can be an added bonus, however that works in your department, to help boost somebody's interview if they have a second language that is definitely needed in your community. Jonathan?
In addition, real briefly, I'm here in Maryland also, and we just had a recruiting and retention meeting in Prince George's County. But my first question is, do you have a community college, some type of college or university in your area? And the second thing is, if you do, and they do have a foreign language department, or they have, or whatever language it is, there are graduate students, there are undergraduate students that have projects to do or research papers and things like that. As a suggestion, you can go to that department and ask for assistance with, I won't use the word hiring, but those students can use that time to build their research papers and defend their thesis and things like that to help develop a organized, structured question and answer type session for those students, for those applicants that don't speak, whatever language it is. But if you reach out to the colleges and universities, I found that they are more than apt to help, because it gives those students another opportunity and experience, and it diversifies the students. It's not only working in a classroom setting. And again, if we can talk further about that.
Okay, thank you so much. I was actually at that recruitment seminar in PG County as well, so that's kind of funny. Okay, so thank you so much. I will look into those things for sure.
Thanks, Brittany. This is Jonah again. I mean, just real quickly, this is an issue not just for the folks that want to get information about recruiting. It's a department issue. So it's a paradigm shift in our thinking. What can the department do to make sure that we can not just talk to the recruits whose first language is another one other than English, but also it's going to have a huge impact in your customer service on every EMS call, etc. So thanks, Brittany.
Thank you. Okay, I have a question from Allie.
Allie?
Allie, you still there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello, hello. Hi, everybody. This is Allie Warren. I am in State College, Pennsylvania. And I just wanted to share something that my department has been doing recently that's been helping in terms of diversity. In State College, we have Penn State University main campus, which is about a 45,000 to 50,000 student university. So we have that huge community, and we also have a rather large town, too. So we have about 140 member department. I'm the only female there, and I'm pretty much the extent of our diversity as well. Through my time in the department, I have helped bring in some other minorities, but it's not too promising. But something that I've been encouraging for a long time is to really try to tap into all of these students that we have. Penn State University has an enormous number of students coming from other countries, so that means we have a large population of Asian people, we have a large population of Hispanics, we have a lot of diversity in this town, and our department does a very poor job of reflecting that. But every semester when we accept new applications, I'm really eager to see who is applying, and then, the big thing is how do we get them to stick around. And last week we just had a new semester start, and I was very encouraged by this example. I was walking through the gym on the way to the computer room, and there was one of our new members standing in the gym, and he looked very confused. He's from South Africa, and come to realize that he had no idea what you do in a gym. He had no concept of lifting weights, what is a treadmill. I mean, he had no idea of what you're supposed to do in a gym. And a few of our college-age members were in there, and he was very encouraged and kind of shown the ropes of how to work out rather than being made fun of. So I was really encouraged by that example, and I hope that our department continues to tap into that resource to be a better reflection of our community.
Great. Thank you, Allie. That one-on-one is hugely important. That kind of encouragement person to person is hugely encouraged.
So there are a few comments that have come in.
And then
Evan Kellis commented that the fire service should be a place of zero tolerance. Hazing should be grounds for immediate termination.
Right.
Robert Palmer commented, I think the focus needs to be on the mission of taking care of people, their pets, and their property. There is no room for the distractions that the types of discrimination present. I agree, zero tolerance. And then Arthur Ho commented, diversity and inclusivity must be embraced in word, writing, and action. Practiced by those in management, the fire chief, town city manager, and boards of selectmen town councils. And then, well, there's a lot. Okay, Shelley Garrow commented, I work with fire department Explorer programs all around our state. The youth explorers are sometimes a much more diverse group than the fire department membership. Our departments have a great track record of turning explorers into full members. Because they focus on building familiarity among the members with the kids, in some cases, it's a very intentional process, bringing kids into classes and drills with members and teaching the kids about firehouse culture. In other cases, it is more casual and organic. Kids are involved with activities and community events and gain respect from members in that way. Do you guys have any comments about any of those I just read? If not, I have two more.
We probably should keep moving so we can get to the final, the videos and stuff. But I just want to thank Matthew and Evan and Robert and Arthur and Shelley. And Shelley actually will have a little comment here coming up on Junior Firefighter Program, so thank you all for that. And also, one of the things that I think, correct me if I'm wrong here, Odessa, Cami, if people have, and we hope they will, have other ideas or other practices of their departments or other suggestions they have, that they can send those in, right, in writing, and we will make those available in the materials. Is that true?
Yes, it is.
Great. Thank you. Well, can we move on to the next slide? And I think, Jonathan, you and I are going to have to talk faster here to get through the end. And you can go ahead and put all these up, Odessa, all the bullets. We just wanted to start, we had a couple of suggestions from us, but we wanted to start with things, actions that we each can take individually, regardless of rank or role, whatever our job is in emergency services. And one of the first two are talk about it and say the actual words. People are afraid to recognize differences. We're afraid to say, oh, gee, Jonathan's a black guy, but no, I'm afraid to mention that because probably Jonathan knows he's a black guy, you know? So it's probably not. But how do we have these conversations and get more comfortable with the conversation about difference? Follow through, I think, is really important for all of us, particularly in leadership, but any of us. If we say we're going to do something and we say, for instance, we're going to meet with one of our volunteers and help them orient or help them feel included, whatever we're going to do, make sure we actually follow through with that, or it can be taken as a sign that we don't care. Evan, thank you for your zero tolerance, and Robert, your comment on zero tolerance, because that was on our slide to begin with. We cannot tolerate bullying and putting people down, or any of these bad behaviors. As a leader, I need to learn about my crew, and that's obvious, I think, to all of us in leadership. But right here, what I mean is that learn what their skills are, and learn, as Jonathan said, just because something is different doesn't make it wrong. It may indeed be a positive innovation in a way that we've never thought about doing, simply because of that person's different experiences. Being the role model, and I don't just mean on the fire ground, I mean that we role model using affirming language, that we role model being welcoming one-on-one, that we role model how we train and include everybody, and we even role model making mistakes. If I say something that's offensive, or I make some reference that is just not welcoming to someone, even if it's language I'm not even clear about what I did wrong, but if somebody comes to me and said, hey, you know, what you just said was really hurtful, well, I can role model cleaning that up. That's a huge lesson for people. We're all going to make mistakes. We don't know how yet to live in this diverse world, so we're going to make mistakes, and how do we model, even when we do make a mistake, cleaning that up? And lastly, speaking up and just simply being courageous to interrupt some of these things that are going on. And we wanted to look at a couple of other areas. So, Jonathan, you were going to talk about the specific program that you have at Bowie, right?
Yeah, the next slide. And I did see a comment that came in, something about the generational gaps and the older. Right. I don't like using the word older because I'm right in the middle. So I like to use the word seasoned veterans. But one of the things that we implemented in Bowie was a first actor program, and basically what a first actor is in my department It's primarily one of the younger individuals, and I've seen a comment where it says like the younger individuals, they come in, they think they know everything, they tech savvy. But what we have done is we've created a position for these individuals to introduce them to the role of an officer, to give them a little bit of responsibility, not enough that it get them overwhelmed or put them in a bad situation, but give them a little bit of responsibility, something that they could be accountable for, hold them responsible for a few little projects here and there. But the key thing that we really work on is the ability to talk to people or your crew and the ability to lead by example. Very often, this generation, the younger generation, if you will, they weren't raised the way we were. Respect, things of that nature that we take for granted. And so a lot of these newer, younger individuals that's joining the fire service don't respect authority. They don't even know what authority is in some cases. And so what we've been able to do is we're able to take a few younger members that we feel as though, as the committee, the officers, lieutenant captains, deputy chiefs, we feel as though they have promising values, or we think they have the ability to go on to be an officer and a respectable person in the department. And we pour everything we have into them so that we're teaching them along the way. It has been very successful, I must admit. And then also, Joan, if I could just have one more minute, what we also are doing is we're taking those seasoned veterans, those 50 and 60-year-old guys that, they're drivers, and I've made them driver trainers, okay? And I've given some responsibility and some ownership to them. And we have them to teach the younger guys how to drive so that everyone feels involved, that we're all putting into our future. So.
Great. Thanks, Jonathan. Can we go to the next slide, please? That's not the... Do we have the prevention safety education slide? There we go. Okay.
You can bring them all up.
There we go. Yeah, we didn't need that first sentence. That's cool. But so here's one of the pieces that's so important for all of us, and we don't talk about prevention and safety education enough, period, in the fire service, volunteer or career. But it is probably our most effective recruiting tool. This is how we make ourselves a recruiting magnet, is by doing our prevention and safety education work more than we are now. We need to know who lives in our community. We really need to be aware of what diverse communities and cultures live in our community. We want to learn what their events are, their different cultural events or whatever scheduled events they have, and make sure that we have somebody from our department showing up there, participating in their events, so we start building that relationship, that contact. Home visits, and I know that's really difficult for a lot of departments, but take a look at the United Kingdom's model. They totally shifted their operational plan that all firefighters on pretty much every shift do some home visits. Two things happened. One, there were fewer fire deaths, there were fewer injuries in the home, and their diverse recruiting went up because people saw who firefighters were, saw what their job was, saw that they cared, and the more people they saw, the more people recruited. That more contact equals more trust, and that's huge because what we're trying to do is build relationship. All of this is about building relationship. At this point, and then we'll go through these other slides really quickly, but at this point I do want to highly recommend Fire 2020's online course called Partnering for Prevention. Lots of resources there to help you exactly on this issue of how do we partner in diverse communities for prevention and safety education. And I think the next one was my slide. Yeah, just very quickly, the junior firefighting program, if you have Explorer programs, they don't have to be formal Explorer programs, but they work. It is a way to bring in young people, and my only comment on the slide was make it fun and start them young. That's one of our moms and her daughter who are parts of our department. the next piece. And the training piece is huge again. That a couple of thoughts, and then Jonathan, if you have a thought on this too. People come because they want to be active. They want to be competent. They want to be skilled at this job. The training is a huge, huge part, not just for us performing our mission, but to make sure that people are safe doing the job. Just one thought on training. When we're training people, this is a great opportunity to affirm and welcome diversity, to ask, does anybody see another way of doing this? We can all learn other ways of doing it. Certainly, women coming into the fire service has changed the ergonomic design of many tools, of apparatus, and of the way we do some things. So there's benefit from that diversity. But while we're actually in a training, we can ask, what's another way of doing this? What ideas do you have? And then we all use firefighters as examples, or have them show how to do a certain skill. So let's pick one of the firefighters who other firefighters may have some stereotype about, oh, they couldn't possibly do that, and have them be the example to show us a skillful way of doing something. Make sure that person is competent and trained so you don't embarrass them, and that's our deal. If somebody can't do a skill, the first question we should be asking is who trained them, not what's wrong with them. Did you have a comment on this, Jonathan, on training?
Oh, no,
We've got 10 minutes left, yeah.
All right, just real brief. I agree with you, Jonah. This is an opportunity to allow people to think, as we like to say, outside the box.
Yep.
We all know, take the example of forcible entry. We try three times to do it one way. If that doesn't work, we automatically go to a different way. So allow this time for your members the opportunity to think outside the box and train them so that what you put into them is what they're going to put into the next person that comes in.
Great, thanks. And next slide, please. Also on training, and just one comment, if you've got mutual aid, automatic aid departments, the more departments you can bring together to train, the more diversity hopefully you'll have, and people get to see each other and break down some of their stereotypes. And next slide. Anytime we can send our folks to any kind of conference, regional, state, national, they're going to meet other people. They're going to meet some of their national role models. They're going to be able to network with people and build their own confidence build their competence and their confidence in doing their job. So it's a great way to help folks. And next slide, and Jonathan, jump in here anywhere. This was for small volunteer departments. This may seem like a throwaway slide, but if you feed them, they'll come back.
Yeah, that's true.
Build the family and grow the team. Offer whatever, whether it's food or whatever, but offer some social time so people get to know each other as individuals and not as stereotypes. Next slide. If you've got some way, firefighters like competition, but this is a time that as leaders we've got to make sure that competition includes everybody and that everybody has a chance for success. But it is certainly a way for people to feel included and feel valued and get a sense of pride. And that moves to the last one, which is literally building that sense of pride. Whatever you can do, here in the Enchanted Circle in New Mexico, we have an honor guard. We have different organizations to help people, and the competition as well helps people build some pride in their job.
And in addition, real briefly, Jonah and everyone, on the bottom left slide, we usually go on a fishing trip every year. Away
nice.
From the firehouse. It's away from the firehouse. It's a way to get out and we just hang out. And so, and I hear a lot, Jonah and everyone, that we always complain about money. Our department doesn't have money. We don't have money. Don't look at spending money as spending money. Spend it as an investment. If we can do that and then we spend it wisely, we get to retain and keep people and attract more members. So next slide.
Excellent. Great. And I think the next one, we wanted to share this, I think it's a 2.5-minute trailer from Fire 20, because we wanted to say there are lots of resources out there for all of us. Fire 2020 is a great source. There are other materials that you can get after the after the webinar. But let's take a look at this. This is just a trailer. It's not the full video that's available to you.
I love being a firefighter. I don't feel like I'm completely myself without this job in my life.
You need to bring your physical game, you need to bring your mental game, and also you need to be an inspiration to others.
As far as I know, I'm the only female bomb tag in the state of Maryland.
I actually got into firefighting totally by accident. And my senior year in high school, somebody asked me about the fire department. The more and more he explained to me about what modern firefighting was, the more and more I fell in love with it.
A qualified, diverse, and inclusive fire department provides better service to our communities.
I'm originally from Guinea, West Africa.
I'm Costa Rican and Puerto Rican.
I belong to the Cheyenne River Sioux tribe. I'm Lakota Sioux.
I'm first generation Vietnamese American.
When I was 16, I came out of the closet. It's only getting more and more accepting every day.
There are so many different ways that the fire service touches a family or touches the community at large.
The area that we grew up in, we grew up around violence. I knew that I didn't want to be a part of the problem. I wanted to be a part of the solution.
As everybody sees you and they smile and they wave and they say, this was a tough neighborhood, but he made it through.
Just because you grew up in poverty or just because you may not be rich or you don't come from a firefighter background, doesn't matter. I'm living proof and you can be a firefighter as well. I'm living the dream.
This is our last question that I know we sent out to people. We would like to hear from you. Many of us are working with the Volunteer and Combination Officers section on a national inclusion and diversity report in the volunteer service. That will be available later this year. It will be a living document with all kinds of videos and resources. All the ones from Fire 2020 will be available on that as well. But we need to know what you need as you are proceeding to create a more inclusive, diverse department. What is it that you need? What kind of resources? What kind of training? What kind of information would you like? So please send us those, and we will make those available to everybody, but we will certainly send them to the VCOS team that's working on this report. And I'm going to, Jonathan, you want a last statement, and then we'll hand it back to the 2020 gals.
I just wanted to say thank you for everyone for participating. We hope that we were able to shed some light on a few topics, provide some additional resources that you all have available you didn't know that you have available. And we look forward to providing any assistance that we can to help you individually, you as a department, and the Fire 2020 staff. Thank you all for putting this together.
Thank you to Chief Jona Olsson and Deputy Chief Jonathan Howard for your time and for putting this all together today. We really appreciate it. We also want to thank all of our participants for taking the time today to join us and learn more about what you can do to help to become a recruiting magnet. Again, all of the materials that Jona was talking about during the webinar will be made available. It should come up as soon as we end the training, and it will also be included in the follow-up email. If you do have any questions or further comments, or if you'd like to share your stories, please feel free to email us here at Fire 2020. Our email is ss@fire2020.org. Please take the time to also answer our 5-question evaluation at the end of the training. We want to ensure that we are continually improving the webinars so that we can give everyone the best information possible. Once again, our webinar is sponsored by Scott Safety with support from PBI, Tyco, Citrix Online, CPS HR Consulting, Esri, and Cigna.